Hello and welcome or welcome back to the Import-Export Hub channel, everybody. Baz Bogdan here, your host for the next 10 minutes or so. Thanks for joining me. By the way, I hope everybody is doing well, and without begging you to hit those small vanity buttons below this video, allow me to present to you India's top 20 headings or slash products that had the largest changes in absolute values, both positive and negative, with 2023 as the reference year if you want, while towards the end of the video I'll cover the top 20 products with the lowest variability, considering here the exported values for the 2019-2023 time frame, basically a rough indication of India's competitive advantage, but more on this later. So on the positive side, guys, we see that the largest absolute positive change in 2023 was registered by heading 8517. So smartphones basically, who saw a $4.7 billion increase, bringing the overall export figure to some $15.6 billion. Quite impressive, and even more impressive, if you ask me, is the compound annual growth rate for the last 5 years, who is around 30%. And my educated guess, let's say, is that this is not just a trend, but a structural shift. Then on the second spot, we see a commodity-related heading, 2601 to be precise. So I'm talking about iron ores and concentrates, who saw a $2 billion positive change relative to 2022. These two, coupled with an impressive 9% compound annual growth rate for the last 5 years, while on the third spot we have medicines. So heading 3004 with $1.3 billion positive change, bringing the overall export value to some $18.8 billion, which is also the largest amount for this time frame. So this was the podium, let's say, but of course we have also Semiconductor Devices, for example, so heading 8541, who is clearly on an upward trend. What else do we have here, guys? We have Copper Wire, who managed an expansion of $717 million almost. We see Oilcake, so heading 2304. We see a relatively new heading, so 8807. Basically parts of aircraft and spacecraft with some $463 million expansion. We have beauty or makeup preparations heading 3304, who had a $460 million expansion. So the overall value of the exports for 2023 was around $768 million. Sorry, we have articles of jewelry and parts thereof, who had a $395 million increase, again relative to 2022, sorry. Unfortunately, with a small compound annual growth rate considering the last 5 years, but not necessarily worrying. And towards the end of this list, we have, tubes and pipes, meat of bovine animals frozen, so heading 0202. While on the 20th spot, guys, we have heading 8481, taps, valves, and similar appliances for pipes, who saw a $301 million expansion from, $1.8 billion in 2022 to some $2.2 billion in 2023. And briefly looking at these 20 headings, it's interesting to see that there are few headings related to commodities or, headings that are very close, so upstream in the value chain to raw commodities. And I'm talking about the headings that I put here in bold, electrical energy, for example, cotton yarn, and the like. which tells me that on the one hand, India still is a destination for companies looking for labor-intensive activities like jewelry, for example. And on the other hand, India has become or is beginning to become a destination for companies looking for higher order products in the value chain, or I don't know, a safety net if you want in the current geopolitical conundrum, like the huge increase in the exports of semiconductor devices and smartphones, for example. But either way, India's role as a high-order export powerhouse is on the rise with the current tariff battles between the Western Bloc, driven mainly by the United States and the European Union duo, and China, on the other hand, which is accelerating this process. But I can tell you this, guys, it won't substitute China, unfortunately. I don't know if they are looking to do this, at least not for the short to medium term, as it does not have yet the infrastructures and policies in place to compete with China. And my guess is that India will have to create its own path, so basically to create and also nurture its own competitive advantages. Anyways, this is a macro perspective. Time will tell how things will unfold. I am not a policymaker, of course. I just interpret data. So let's move to India's bottom 20 headings, who registered the largest absolute negative changes. And here, Petroleum Oil had the largest absolute negative change. We're talking about some $9.4 billion from a whopping $94.4 billion in 2022 to almost $85 billion in 2023. Diamonds followed on the second place with a year-on-year contraction of $5.7 billion, here with a potentially worrying negative 3.6% compound annual growth rate for the last 5 years. And on the third place, we have Unroth Aluminium, who had a $2.3 billion contraction in 2023, bringing the overall exports to some $4.7 billion. What else do we have here, guys? We see cane or sugar beet. We have insecticides, herbicides, and the like, with a contraction of $1.2 billion. We see flat roll products of alloy steel other than stainless. We have polyacetals. We see ferroalloys with a $524 million contraction. Tractors is also present in this list, so heading 8701, while the last three headings from this top 10 list are cotton, t-shirts, and maize or corn. This last one with the $415 million contraction from $1.1 billion in 2022 to $703 million in 2023. And again, quickly analyzing these headings, we see more commodity-related headings, again, those in bold, with very, very few headings showing a positive figure in terms of compound annual growth rate for the last 5 years. And I'm not saying this because it's a worrying thing, but because this is the normal cycle for commodity-related products. So anyways, these were India's top 20 headings that experienced the largest absolute negative changes in 2023. And now, guys, I will show you India's top 20 headings where it has a competitive advantage. Again, it's a rough indication. You should dig deeper for more insights, but for sure, this is a good starting point for a more detailed research. So, guys, here I've calculated the coefficient of variation for the last 5 years relative to the exported values, as I didn't have access to the volumes, but still, it's a good indicator if you ask me. And here we see that seeds, fruits, and spores for sowing had the lowest coefficient of variation. Other vegetables, fresh or chilled, follows with a coefficient of variation of 0.035, while woven fabrics here, heading 5311, was on the third spot with a coefficient of variation of 0.036. And the list goes on with, I don't know, carpets, we have meat of bovine animals, frozen follows. We have pharmaceutical preparations, we see rods, bars, tubes, and the like. Malt extract follows immediately with a coefficient of variation of 0.06. Feldspar is also present here with a coefficient of variation of 0.064, and some $57.6 million worth of exports. We see tea, whether or not flavored, so heading 0902 with some $706 million worth of exports for 2023, and a coefficient of variation of 0.065. While towards the end of this list we see percussion musical instruments. Other oil seeds is on the 19th place, while sulfur, so heading 2802, ends this top 20 list with a coefficient of variation of 0.072 and some $23.2 million worth of exports for 2023. And again, quickly analyzing these values and this list, I see much smaller exported values. Meat of bovine animals frozen and separate chemically defined organic compounds are the only two headings in this list who managed to break the $1 billion threshold relative to the exports in 2023. And another thing that I see here is the small range in the compound annual growth rate values for these headings. So I didn't calculate the min, max, and the range for the previous two sheets, but my guess is that the values there are much, much bigger. So again, this is another rough indicator, let's say, that these are headings in which India has a competitive advantage with relatively stable exports, at least in terms of values, even though in absolute terms, let's face it, we're not talking about tens of billions of dollars. So guys, with this being said, that's it for today. Thanks for watching. I really hope that I've managed to provide you with some useful information. Don't forget to hit those small vanity buttons. And again, as usual, until next time, keep your business safe. Thanks.